So this is to have a go at the curved shape improv patchwork here. So these are a few that are just being prepared now to put together in this a Pinterest board to give you some ideas on these. But our starting point is if you choose 4 pieces of fabric in a pile, I'm going to have to cut these to the right size, but I'd go between those being 10 to 12 centimetre squares times 4. And then once they're cut to size, I'll show you cutting the curves for them. I've cut these to size now, as I said, between 10 and 11 centimetres squared. Mine are 10 and 12, sorry. Mine are more like 10 centimetres square here. So I've got my 4 fabrics in a pile, and what I'm just going to do with my tailor's chalk is draw a few curves. So you could do it, the ones here that I've just got I've cut 3 curves. So the 3, yeah, I've got 3 separate pieces, so I just had to draw 2 curves to get 3 different bits of fabric to patchwork together differently. If you wanted to, you could cut it so you've got 4 different pieces of fabric and draw that 3rd curve there. But to get it like this, we're going to draw 1 curve here. So I've done that one. I am just doing it by eye. So that is 7 centimetres. You could just leave it as 2 bits of fabric that you change around if you wanted to try that. The other one I'll just go for sort of halfway between there and there. And again, it doesn't have to be a perfect curve. They do look quite nice when they're sort of slightly different shapes as well. And they do all seem to go together a little bit differently depending on what fabric you've used and how you then pop them together. So I've drawn 1 curve here and 1 curve here, and I'm going to cut through those now. So you can either do that with your rotary cutter or with your scissors, either is fine. So I'm now cutting. Yeah, so I've done 1, just reline that up. Doesn't matter too much if they move a little bit, because it's quite nice if the curves are slightly different on each one. And then you can always be all cut to the same large square when you've finished. So here's my next curve. So now I've got 4 central, 4 outers, and then the 4 middle bits there. So first of all, I can lay out these 4 like this. Yeah. And then I can go for my middle one. So if you want to do it as, so this one here is my hammered printed bit of white cotton. So if the next one of that there, I can just pop on one. And then this is the gold silk here, and add that onto there. And then this linen will move on to here. And then this blackberry dyed piece can move on to here. And then for my centers here, so this hammer printed piece goes on one, the gold goes on another one, linen to there. So that mixes them up quite nicely, but you can mix it up if you wanted to. I could always try putting the gold one there, the blue one here. It's just trying to keep a different one in each patch, if you like. So then if I put that there and there, I've still got all different ones within each block there. So it is up to you how you want to mix it up. And then we're going to sew them separately together as 4 different blocks that then can be all sewn together in a square, or you might want to do them in a line and tessellate them. We'll have a go once we've started sewing those together. Once you've decided which order you want to put these in, we'll separate them into 4 blocks. If it helps, I'd pin sort of each bit together so you don't lose them. And then starting with your first one, if I do the inner curve first here of this one, so I'm going to stitch right sides together, this curve to this curve. So this is, it's a bit tricky to sort of stitch it that way and then get it to lay flat, but some pressing does really help with this. There's the option as well, if you wanted to, you could just sort of fuse these down onto a bucking cloth and just do embroidery stitches around them to sort of hold them together if you wanted to do something like a fern stitch or a fly stitch to hold those. That is one option. So what I tend to do with these is if I fold this in half, right sides together, and find the center here, I then fold this piece right sides together, and on the inner curve also find the center. So this is sort of the same technique if you do any curves in any of your machine sewing as well, to get something to ease in together. So I've got, well, it's hard to tell here, but this is going to be my right side and that's my right side there. So it's like this. I found the middle, Then if I place this right side down on this curve this way and just pin that in place, you can take the other pin out. I then also need to know that this edge here is going to need to get to fit to this point. So we're sort of bending the curve to fit into place. So now I've got that. So what we've got is right sides to right sides. And then with a small sort of 1/2 centimetre seam, I'm going to stitch that in place. So it is always hard with curves to just get it to ease into place without puckering. So you can always tack it in place first, or as well as pins in the centre and the edges, just sort of between those two as well. So that when we come to sew, what we're trying not to do is pucker. So I do it from this way up here. You just try not to catch any of the puckers, just ease them out. So you can just play around with trying to get it into place. When you then fold it back, it does lay nice and flat. So just playing with getting that matched in. And as well, if you see that it sort of looks like it's pleating and puckering on this outer edge, that doesn't matter, because once we've stitched this bit flat, this will all release because it's going to get pressed into folded out to the larger part of the curve. So it's just keeping the 1/2 centimetre seam allowance, or you could even try for 3 millimeters, so that it's not puckered. So you can see there, that's going to lay nice and flat, even though this bit here is slightly puckered. And then the same here, as long as it's not stitching down a pucker, it doesn't matter if these bits are. So I'm going to thread up a needle, and I'm going to do you can try either a running stitch or a back stitch. Obviously a running stitch will be quicker to do, but it may look neat with a back stitch. So you can try both ways, but just small little stitches around this curve. So I've just started doing a bit of a running stitch here and taking the pins out as I go. We'll finish that small little running stitch there. Now what I can do is press this out and flatten down my curve. So I've done it in pink here so that you can see my stitching, but if you choose a colour that blends in nicely with your fabrics as well, it will look a little bit more subtle. So that's just done with the running stitch there. You can see I did get a ever so slight pucker there, but I don't think it's going to matter too much. So that's that first curve placed on. And then the next thing I'm going to do is find the center of this outside curve here. And then, so the right side of this linen, find the center here. And then do the same again, where I'm going to do right side to match those up. So you're pulling the curve back on itself and then easing that round the curve. So if you just pin the centres and the outside edge first, and then just ease out any puckering or gathers. So I've pinned that one all in place. That feels easier than this doing the first curve, just because it's a little bit of a wider curve to work with. So now I'm going to do the same again. I'm going to do a running stitch or a back stitch around this curve, and then I'll press that outwards. So now I've done this little running stitch here around this outside curve. I can then press that out, and that's one of our squares completed. So I'll move on to the other ones. Just to show you, there is a video in the improv patchwork module, along with the curves, about stitching down your seam allowances. So you can just have these pressed, and what I do is, this here is wanting to sort of press towards the lighter silk fabric than the linen, and this one is pressing that way. So just iron it however best to get it to lie flat. And what you can do is then stitch down that little bit of seam allowance with a little stab stitch up and down through to the front of your fabric, which can add a nice detail if you then also want to have a little stitch that you can see from the front. So if I press that to this sort of way here towards the silk, I could do a little stitch on here. Again, I could encourage this one to press out the same way, which actually would probably look better there, and then just do a little stab stitch along the linen as well, which could be done in a contrasting colour, or I could do that in the indigo as well. So that's our first one done, and I'll go on here to the next one I'm going to do. So I will put inside first curve, find the centre, mark with a pin, and then the same inner curve, find the centre, and then I've just marked that there with a little crease, match that up, and we're going to ease that in and do exactly the same with what we've done with this one. So that's pinned round that outside curve now. So like I said, it doesn't matter if all this bit's rippled here. We're just keeping flat where we're going to sew that running stitch along that curve here. Well, I've sewn two of those now, so you can see they do sort of misalign slightly, but I think that's part of the charm of the look of these. So you can, once you've made all four, choose to sort of do right sides together and stitch, so you end up with a circle in the middle, or they could all just be put together in a line, or sort of like that. Play around with them, putting it into a curve. It's up to you. Obviously these need pressing a bit more, but that's the idea. So you complete that with all four, and then have a play around with how you might stitch them all together.